Today I'm going to show you how to make an identity disc from the movie Tron Legacy. Here we go! For this build, I used EVA foam, super glue, paint, Jeff Bridges, sanding tools, safety gear, scissors, razor pens, and a box cutter. First I have to cut up a bunch of foam circles. For this particular build, I'm gonna have to pack a lot of hardware into a very small prop, and I normally craft with EVA foam, which tends to be more flexible the thinner it gets. So for the core, I'll be using What the Foam, which is much more rigid. This is gonna consist of multiple layers, stacked one on top of the other. I made a stencil out of cardboard, so that each of those layers would match. I weighted that down with a metal machinist block, but any weight will do, really. I traced that using a white paint marker, just because of the contrast. Then I cut it out from the sheet with a razor pen, and once it was out, I cut out the center. Then I cleaned up the rough spots with my rotary tool. Okay, you guys should be able to see that it's a little bit wider here. That's because while freehanding this, I deviated a little bit inward here and a little bit outward there. So we're gonna have to fix that by sanding. For the interior, I'm gonna use a rotary tool. A little bit better. And for the exterior, gonna use the belt sander. I sanded the outer edge until it was smooth. Now that it was nice and smooth, I went ahead and added details. The disc isn't just flat, the internal ring has an angled bevel to it. To make that, I'm gonna use a large foam triangle bevel, which I cut down to size using a box cutter. Now it can't just be a triangle, because that would make my life too easy. There's a flat part in the middle of the disc, so I cut one of the corners off with my box cutter. This yields a somewhat irregular and jagged edge, so I brought it back over to the belt sander to even it out. Alternatively, you could use the belt sander straight from the start, and just forget about the box cutter step altogether. But cutting off most of the material will cut down on foam dust that would otherwise need to be cleaned up later. When the edge was even, I curled up the bevel and slid it into the center of the disc. Then I measured and cut strips of 4mm foam to go around the edge of the bevel on either side. I attached them with super glue. These will stabilize the bevel, which is trying to pop out there, and hold it in place. Plus there is a little flat part on the actual prop, so this will take care of that little detail. Whenever I'm cutting a piece that has to go around, well, anything round, I like to leave a little bit extra just in case I mess up. Once both of those were securely on there, I was able to move on to the outer rings. I used my original stencil to trace and cut 2 discs from 3/8" EVA foam floor mats. I don't know if you can tell, but this is actually leftover foam from when I made the shark tutorial. Before cutting out the middle, I'm gonna work on the outer bevel, which is more gradual than the inner one. It's sort of supposed to imply a blade, like a sci-fi Ulu or Odd Jobs hat from that one Bond movie. But when the discs are off, it's a totally flat edge, so I'll need to account for that. At any rate, if I were to cut out the center circle and then bring it over to the belt sander, it could easily destroy the ring. It could get snagged on the belt and fold up on itself and just get wrecked. So I have to leave that in there for now, just for structural integrity. To cut down on sanding, I'm using a box cutter to slice a basic bevel around the rim. It's not wanting to cut through this much surface area of foam, so I have to continually sharpen it using my knife sharpener. Although to tell the truth, I think this blade's near the end of its life. I think it's worth mentioning here that the 1/2" EVA foam floor mats seem to cut better, but I thought that it would make the disc look too chunky. Yeah, that's definitely gonna need some sanding. So once more to the belt sander I go. Always with the sanding. I complain a lot about the sanding, but there actually wasn't that much this time. I think it was only 10 minutes per piece. There we go. Now that that's mostly smoothed out, I can cut out the center. I'm trying to do this delicately, because as we've established, sanding on the interior is difficult. Popped out the offcut. Despite the delicate nature with which I work, I still needed to do just a little bit of sanding with my rotary tool. When that was finished, I made an identical one for the other side. Before attaching the outer blades to the core, I have to think about how I'm gonna light this. I'm a little burned out on the UV resin method, which I use for the Lord of the Rings sword, because while it works, it's super messy and takes an extremely long time to get right. So instead I'll be using LEDs. First I cut out a space for the battery controls. This is much easier to do when it's apart, as opposed to all together. I'm making sure to do this on the grip area so that it will be hidden by my hand. I also cut channels for the wires. Then I carefully glued on the top ring. Bottom ring? I mean, the disc is symmetrical, so either? Sure. In order to get the best lighting on either side, I cut out most of the black circle, making sure to leave spokes to hold it all together. Then I cleaned up some of the seams with putty. This arguably isn't necessary because seams give it kind of a techie vibe, but that's not where the seam's supposed to be on the movie prop, so away they go. While I was at it, I also cleaned up some rough spots on the face of the other ring. You can see how much more there were on the other ring, which I just sanded all the way through, rather than using that dull box cutter. I'm not attaching the pieces just yet, because having them separate like this is just going to make it so much easier to paint. Oh, before I forget, The light ring isn't a perfect circle all the way around. There's a break by the grip, so I made a foam insert for either side using scrap foam. I used my rotary tool with a thin drum head to round out either side. Then I added 4 greeblies to the inside circle bevel, also on either side, so 8 greeblies altogether. Luckily, those look exactly like socket head cap screws, so that's what I used. I drilled pilot holes, which is so overkill. You'd accomplish the same thing with the toothpick, but the drill was closer, so drill. Then I hand tightened them in. And that's it for the greeblies. This is relaxing compared to Star Wars greeblies. This is nothing. Used to this step taking forever. Now it's almost time to paint. First, I'm going to give it a quick blast with the heat gun. This will cut down a bit on the number of paint layers I'll need to do. You just don't want to do it for too long, otherwise you could burn your prop. I also did the other side. Then I painted it. I'm using flat black paint this time, which is far less reflective and dries so much faster than the gloss paint. I can get a dozen layers done in a day. And I think that was actually done on purpose because reflections create a lot of problems in post. For a film that has as much CGI and compositing as Tron does, either Tron really. When that dries, I'm going to work on the lighting. For the lighting, I explored a number of options. Before even starting this build, I bought this light up frisbee, which is cool, but it's missing the inner light ring, and cutting a hole in the center would cut out all the electronics. And in close-up shots, you can actually see the individual LEDs. It's still useful for VFX shots in that if you can get the frame rate right and get a good spin on it before it comes into frame, then it looks pretty believable. Instead, I use silicone LED tubes. So basically, I gotta cut this up and wire it into the disc. Now, longtime viewers of the channel are well aware that I rarely break out the soldering iron. It has been a long time since I've soldered last. Is that cloth wire? I think it might be time to update my equipment. This is tinner, which is supposed to help clean off the corrosion that'll build up on your soldering iron with an abrasive metal sponge as well. These are kind of my backup soldering tools. There's like a special rig that you're supposed to use. It looks like a stop motion animation armature with a magnifying glass on it, but I cannot find it. So, tiny vise. Also can't find my wire stripper, which is really driving me up the wall. The one time in years that I need it. Can't find it. Nope. These gloves aren't for soldering, they're for typing in cold rooms where my computer is, because cold is better for computers. But usually when I solder, it spits, and I'm just trying to avoid some of that from hitting me. I'm gonna get some airflow in here. Okay, so that's on there, and it definitely happened totally seamlessly. There wasn't 20 minutes of futzing around in between that cut. Let's just test it. Nice. So that's good. I mean, it'll be good when I'm not just like trying to hold it here. Although I do kind of like the flicker. It's kind of Blade Runner-y, but that's obviously not the look that we're going for here. So yeah, those have to be down there as well. See, here's the thing. There's got to be multiple breaks in this. Oh, it's gonna be such a gamble. And aha, it's alive! Oh, it's dead. Alive, dead. Alive, dead. Alive! Nice. Nice. Just gonna see if this works. Oh! We have a pulse. Yeah! Awesome. That's great. That is just great. All right, let's do the last connection and close this bad boy up. Okay, so the circuit should be complete. Here we go with the test. Nice. Now, how secure is this? Can I even move it? Okay. I'm cutting a trench in the other ring very delicately. This is right at the edge. This is going to hold the outer ring of LEDs in place. I'm making like an A-frame cut. There's actually a tool that I've used specifically designed for that, but it's too destructive for a piece this thin. And then I hot glued it in place. I weighted it down with metal machinist blocks, which will not only help it hold in place, but as the glue dries, the blocks, being metal, will help to disperse the heat. All right, moving on. I'm going to reinsert this strip of silicone that I've cut down to size. And as long as it's aligned correctly, you still get good light distribution. But I am going to have to glue that in there, oddly enough, with contact cement. Contact cement is poison, yada yada. Next, I contact cemented them together. Okay, this part of the build process is never pretty. Now, I don't really need to put glue on the other side, but because I have a couple of problem areas like right here, I am going to do a little bit of glue on the other side. Not gonna lie, these were a pain to thread and resolder, but I think they look cool, and that's how to make a Tron disc. But wait, there's more! In the movies, the discs mount to an adapter on the back of the character's suits. So, I cut another foam circle and a bevel in order to make that. I carved out holes with my leather hole punch, and I used magnets strategically placed to line up with the screws on the disc. And then I attached the whole thing to a pasta strainer. No posture trainer. I'm filming this before dinner. I'm starving right now. My mind's elsewhere. The rest of the suit is just a combination of spandex and themed workout wear. After that, I lost 30 pounds until I looked halfway decent in spandex. One day we'll be together again, spaghetti. This turnip is taste of sadness. Much less successful Simon Garfunkel song. And I put it on. Hero pose. We can't see it like that. Nailed it. Thanks for watching, everyone. Let me know what you'd like to see me make next in comments down below. Subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next build. And support me on Patreon if you want to help out the show and see your name in the credits like these wonderful people. Happy crafting. See you later.